Hi, Connor. So, you got a lot of art supplies from us over the Christmas break, and I'm sorry that they didn't get there in time for Christmas. But I hope you had a very good Christmas and a very happy New Year with you and Papa and all the family and everything. I told your Papa that I was going to be making some videos to so that we can kind of stay connected a little bit because you like to draw and we like to draw and we like to paint and I'm pretty sure you'll like to paint. Now this video that I'm doing a voiceover is for something else, but I thought I'd show you some of the things that I do when I draw and paint. Uh, while I'm doing this little tips on how to improve your drawing because you already draw really good, but we can always improve, right? So one of the first things that I would say is a good tip to have, whether you're painting with watercolors or you're coloring with pencil crayons or markers or even wax crayons, Crayola crayons, then would be to save your white. Have you ever done this? Have you ever drawn something and then you said, oh, I need some white there, and then you tried to go over with the white and it doesn't really work really well? You don't see the white very well. That's because, excuse me, that's because you didn't save your whites. So when you're drawing, if you kind of sketch it out a little bit and you put an indication of where you want something to be very light, then you have a better chance of being able to save your whites and have a brighter image. Now, this kind of goes with that same tip of saving your white, and that is work in layers. Work with very light layers. If you work with very light layers, then you can get more details in, and if you have to go back and say, oh, I want this part to be lighter, well, it's already pretty light to begin with, and it's easy to kind of erase a little bit. And you can kind of see what I'm working on here. I'm working on the center of the flower, and I'm using layers because I had already drawn or painted a light wash of light brown, and I wanted darker seeds on the top, and I had to put that detail in, but it had to be done very light, with a light touch, but with a very dark color, because this was part of my darkest parts of my flower. And one of the tricks that I use when I paint and when I draw is that I go back and forth between my lightest color and my darkest colors, so that I can kind of figure out how dark my colors need to be. If I have my darkest color down and I have my lightest color down, all I have to do is go back and forth between the two. Okay, so I put my next lightest color down, which will be a little bit darker than my lightest, and then I put my next darkest color down, which would be a little lighter than my darkest, and whatnot. And I kind of end up meeting in the middle. Sometimes it means that I need to touch up my darks, and sometimes it means I need to kind of rework my lights a little bit. But at least that way I have a better chance of having a good color combination between light and dark. So that's tip 2, is balance between light and dark, right? Okay. Now, I'm working and I'm painting a sunflower here. And yes, this is a sunflower. But you can tell by the heart of it that it's a sunflower plant. It just happens to have some red streaks in it, which made it really interesting, which is why I chose to paint this particular sunflower. So I used a reference, That means that I wasn't painting something from my imagination. I could paint something from my imagination if I wanted to, but when you're learning how to draw and how to paint, you want to start with using a reference. And I mean, Michelangelo didn't paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling without having reference of what a person looks like. He didn't paint Adam without having reference of what a man would look like, right? And Leonardo didn't paint Mona Lisa without having somebody sitting in front of him. Mona Lisa was actually a real person. We just don't know her name. It wasn't really Mona Lisa, it was something else, right? But he painted from reference too. And we can do the same, and that's okay. And part of using reference when you're learning how to draw and you're learning how to paint and whatnot is sometimes you can trace, and that's okay to trace. As long as the picture is your own, because obviously you're not going to trace Mr. Bean's teddy bear without, like, just by putting a piece of paper over top of him. He's kind of bumpy, right? You trace from a piece of paper and a picture. So you can trace. It's okay when you're learning. And sometimes even when you're good, like I traced this flower when I before I painted it because I wanted to get some of the details that were very fine. I wanted to get them to be okay and better than what I could do if I just did them without tracing. And that. I had a good idea of what they looked like. I mean, I had the picture in front of me, but it allowed me to get better precision on what I was doing. Now, should you trace everything? No. I didn't trace everything that I drew here, that I sketched before I started painting. I just traced those details that I knew were very difficult, and that I wasn't very sure how to get them right, and whatnot. I had drawn them out a couple of times before, but it was still wasn't very comfortable for me. So it's okay to do that a little bit, especially when you're learning. So don't be afraid of that. Okay. Another tip that I have is take your time. This painting here that I did is not very big. It's only 5x7, so it's about the size of a picture that you have in your photo album. This painting took me 3 days to do because I did it when I had time to draw. Sometimes I don't have time to draw everything or paint everything all in one go. And with watercolor, I have to actually let it dry sometimes between layers. So what I talked about when I said about saving your whites and drawing in layers, when you paint with watercolor, you paint with layers a lot. And even if you color with color pencils, which I know you like to do right now, you should be working with layers and drawing, not so pushing so hard on the pencil because it's hard on your hand, it's hard on your arm, and it gets tiring pretty quick if you push very hard. But if you draw with a very light touch, you save your whites better, and if you make a mistake, it's easier to fix it. But it's also easier on your hands, so that means that you can actually spend more time drawing, and that because you're not tired, your arm's not tired, your hand's not cramped up, and you're not sore. So don't be afraid to take your time and to use a light touch. The more layers you can add, the darker the image will be. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing in my painting here, going back to some of the tips that I was talking about. Notice I'm balancing between my lights and darks a little bit. I'm putting details down that are a little bit darker, and whatnot, you kind of see them coming up. My videos quality isn't great, but you kind of see them coming up a little bit better and whatnot. And I test out my colors on the side there, as you can see, when I'm not exactly sure. And I don't know if you see it right in the corner down at the bottom there on the right. That's my paint palette. That's not to wash your brushes. That's a paint palette so that you can either do different colors or you can do different consistency of paint with the same color. And this is a watercolor tip for you. When you're painting with watercolors, water does two things to your paint. Water does, it activates your paint, right? So it makes it so that you can use it, right? If you think of the watercolors you have at school or the little palettes that you have, they're dry. You have to add water to them. Well, it activates your paint. But the other thing that it does is that it's almost as if you're adding white to your paint. So you see the dark red color that I have? Well, the more the more water that I add to it, the more pink it comes out. But if I only added a little bit of water to it, then it would be more red, right? So, and you can see that with the yellow that I'm using, because I'm using you can't see the yellow that I'm actually using. It's on the other side. It's the same yellow, it's just more concentrated, so that's why it's coming out so dark on the paper. But the yellow that you can see in my palette, that's the yellow that I used to do the petals. And you can go back and see that when in the video that yellow is that's the yellow that I'm using. See, you can see here the two yellows are very different. So here I'm just adding some details to my to my painting, and that's the things that make your art be different, right, from others, is how you add the details and what details you add. Anyhow, the video is coming up to an end here, so I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you next time. I have some other videos that I'm going to have to edit on tips on how to improve your art and how to draw with perspective and how to make things 3D and things like that. But my painting here is all done, and I'm going to cut it up, and I'm going to be done.
See you next time.